Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs got some massive game-changing news earlier this week when cornerback Daylen Everett decided that he is coming back for the 2025 season. Now, I know that Daylen Everett is not a fan favorite, right? But you have to admit that he has gotten better since the 2023 season where he was up and down. He still wasn't perfect this past year in 2024, but if you're going to criticize him for the 2023 season, which I totally understand, I criticized him too, way too up and down. He had to get a lot better in 2024, and I think he did that. Now, there's still a long way to go. He's not elite. I'm not saying he's this outstanding superstar of cornerback, but he did make strides and he did make improvements. And now Georgia has a multi-year starter coming back in the secondary, which is gigantic because they will not have Malachi Starks. They will not have Dan Jackson at safety. And they've got young cornerbacks who are still coming around, right? And if Daylen Everett were to have left for the NFL, he would have got drafted, number one. Some of y'all might think that's crazy, but I'm telling you right now, dude would have gotten drafted. And if he would have entered the portal, which is crazy, but if he did, he'd be one of the top cornerbacks in the portal and a guy that everyone would be in after, right? So I know that he'll occasionally give up a catch or a big play here and there, and sometimes it looks ugly out there, but the guy did step up and he made a lot of plays last year. He was third team All-SEC, which is pretty solid considering how many good cornerbacks there are in the conference. 58 tackles in 2024, 3 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. I mean, the guy made plays, especially against Texas. He had the interception and the forced sack fumble against Texas in Austin, 2 interceptions in the SEC title game. And, he was a pretty dependable cornerback. There's no doubt about it. But what I knew in my mind, I was thinking when he was still trying to make this decision, I remember thinking if Daylen Everett leaves, that means Daniel Harris is the number 1 cornerback on the roster, and that's not an ideal situation. And I know fans are excited about Ellis Robinson. I think the guy has the potential to be special. I know everyone's excited about DeMello Jones too. That was a dynamic, one of the best players in the state of Georgia in that 24 class. But having a guy come back that has experience, he's a veteran guy who's made plays in big games coming back, I think that is huge. Because in another video I made this week, I talked about how they've got to replace so many defensive linemen and outside linebackers, edge guys. So it does help them that they have their best cornerback from last season coming back this year. And again, he still has some work to do. He gave up the touchdown against Notre Dame, which was a little odd because he was playing in the slot and he gave up easy inside leverage, which led to a pretty easy touchdown throw. He usually plays on the outside, and that's where he did a lot of damage against Quinn Ewers in Texas. But make no mistake, the guy doesn't stink. If you still think that Daylen Everett stinks as a cornerback, it's just not reality. He is a good cornerback. He's not really good. He's not great. He's not elite. I'm not trying to kiss the dude's butt or anything, but him coming back is a massive deal. And I think you could, make the case that it is a true game changer for Georgia's secondary because now you still have competition for that number 2 slot, right? Ellis Robinson is going to push Daniel Harris, DeMello Jones, Andre Evans, Chris Peel, guys that Georgia fans may not know a ton about. They're just kind of waiting in the wings, and now they don't have to be thrown out there, and the staff hopes that they turn into something, solid, right? If Daylen Everett takes a step forward and Daniel Harris continues to improve even a little bit, that's a solid duo with Ellis Robinson probably getting some playing time as well. I think you can't hold him on the bench forever. And if they're able to keep him, because again, the portal opens up in the spring and there are a lot of programs who would love to tell Ellis Robinson, hey dude, you didn't play at all last year. You're not guaranteed to start this year. Why don't you come play for us? We'll give you this big old check right here and you can come start for us. I mean, that could still happen. So they need to hold on to Ellis Robinson and eventually you got to play the kid. I do think his length, ball skills, everything he's got tells me that he has the tools to be a very, very good cornerback and possibly an elite cornerback. But there were just guys ahead of him on the depth chart. And again, you don't want to throw freshmen out there in the secondary. I talked with Travaris Robinson during media days and I said, hey man, your guys get a lot of heat. Number one, because it doesn't feel like the secondary is as good as they were in years past, right? There is no DeAndre Baker. There's no Eric Stokes. There's no Tyson Campbell. There's no Kamari Laster. There's not even a Keely Ringo at cornerback right now, who played a lot last year. Ellis Robinson could be that guy. I think Damali Jones has the chance to be a really good corner, but we haven't seen it out of them. They're still kind of unknowns as far as productivity and actual playing time goes. So that's one. And number two, I asked him, I said, when one of your guys makes a mistake and Dalen Everett gives up any type of catch, everyone sees it, right? Everyone remembers that. But if a defensive lineman on any particular play gets thrown backwards 5 yards and gets buried into the ground, it's tough to catch up on that. Those are easy to miss. But when a guy gives up a big play in the secondary, Georgia fans, they lock that in, right? Georgia fans are smart. They remember that Dalen Everett is the guy who gave up probably way too many catches in 2023 and still had a couple of hiccups here and there in 2024. Again, he wasn't perfect, but having a multi-year starter returning for a final season to help the young guys behind him, I think is massive. So I'm not saying he's going to be a first-round pick. I think I said in high school, I think he has the potential to be a first-round pick if he develops and gets better year after year. That's on him. But yeah, I did say out of high school, dude was a 5-star for a reason with ball skills, size. He was a willing tackler, and we've seen that. Again, 58 tackles this past year. So the guy can play, and who knows, maybe with a special 2025 season, if he proves he can be an elite cornerback, maybe he does slip into that first round. But he's got to get a lot better, right? I think it's going to take him to have a much better season for that to happen. But I've been high on him a long, long time, and he is getting better. There's no doubt about it. And again, I criticized his play a lot in 2023, but I have no problem acknowledging and recognizing his improved play in 2024. So Dalen Everett returning. You've got Daniel Harris, who started last year. Like I said, I told all of y'all that he was better than Julian Humphrey. I wasn't sure why Julian Humphrey was starting over him for the first half of the season, kind of into the second half, really, before Julian Humphrey quit on the team and Daniel Harris became that guy. I know he struggled in fall practice. I think that's the reason why. I think he was in Kirby Smart's doghouse, but he got out of the doghouse. I think Julian Humphrey had the pass interference against Tennessee. They put him on the bench, and that's when he quit, and Daniel Harris took over. But Ellis Robinson is a guy that everyone's excited about, and I get it. But I will say this, little insider scoop. When we were able to talk with the coaches and players before the Sugar Bowl during media days, every time I try to talk to a freshman, whether it was KJ Bolden, Chris Cole, Nate Frazier, Ellis Robinson, they always had like a support staff member standing right over us, right, beside the player to make sure they didn't say anything to the terrible media, right? The Georgia staff, they do a great job of making sure these kids don't tell us anything, the coaches don't tell us anything. We're the bad guy to Kirby, I guess. I don't really know, but you weren't getting anything out of Ellis Robinson because they were told, hey, don't say anything. But I also think that maybe it's because some of these guys have a foot in the portal already and they don't want us asking about that particularly. I'm not saying that's the case with Ellis Robinson, but when I asked Travaris Robinson, hey, how's Ellis progressing? How's he doing? What should Georgia fans know about his progress and his growth, his development? And he immediately just started talking about the defensive backs as a whole. He said, yeah, Ellis is doing well, but we also have Damali Jones. We've got Andre Evans. We've got Chris Peel. We've got a lot of guys. So he kind of just dismissed the question that I asked specifically about Ellis. And maybe it's because he wasn't happy with the play. I don't know. And I don't want to speculate, but with the transfer portal the way it is, if I were a coach or one of the old support guys, not real coaches, but guys to help, guys to monitor the freshmen that they have, I'd be making sure that those kids aren't saying anything either, so I get it. But just a little note, I just thought it was a little odd that Coach Robinson didn't really specifically talk about Ellis himself, just talked about the whole group and the assistants to the assistants, right? The little Dwight Schrutes they got running around, made sure that they were shoulder to shoulder with those players as we were talking to them. So they were coached up. There's no doubt about it. But listen, at cornerback, they've got to get better. Dalen Everett's got to get better, but him coming back is huge. There's no doubt about it. And I know a lot of Georgia fans still, they don't like Dalen Everett. They think he stinks, yada, yada, yada. If you're going to remember his 2023, it's okay to acknowledge that he got better and that he had a pretty decent season in 2024. It was a lot better than what Julian Humphrey brought to him. It was better than what Daniel Harris brought to him. He was obviously more prepared to play than the younger guys. So him coming back is a huge deal because you got to have defensive backs who can play. And when Georgia won their championships, they had playmakers in the back end, and they had a really, really good secondary. And they could be good again next year, but they need to improve at the safety spot, and they did that through the portal, and they need these young cornerbacks to step up and start emerging. But for now, they do have Dalen Everett coming back. Daniel Harris has did not enter the portal. I guess he still could in the spring. It would be kind of crazy. But right now, I think you'd have to lock him in again at that number 2 cornerback spot and see if any of these freshmen can kind of push them for playing time. It'll be a big spring for those guys, but no doubt about it. I would call this a game changer for Georgia's defense, having one of their best defenders, especially in the secondary, coming back for a final season when he would have got drafted. It wouldn't have been in probably the first, second, maybe not the 4th round. He would have been drafted. Instead, he came back to improve his draft stock. We'll see how it works, but I'm expecting a big 2025 season from cornerback Dalen Everett. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you over on the website.